Board.
Okay, thank you. So do you want me to mute or no?
What?
Myself.
What?
Okay, never mind.
Yeah, you can mute if you want to. Okay, got the recording started? Hi, everybody. Welcome. So we're going to do a quick activity that I want you guys to try either while you're listening to this or on your own. And then you can post along in the comments. So this is not for my 3 participants here. This is for everybody else in the group. My 3 participants here are going to show you how this little activity works and see what they come up with. It's usually a pretty darn good activity. But anyway, so try the activity either while you're listening to the recording or, at a later time, because I don't want you to do it while you're driving. All right. So for my lovely participants here on stage, I want you to close your eyes and take a nice deep breath through your nose. And you can exhale through your nose or your mouth, either one, but just nice, slow, and controlled. And on the next inhalation, I want you to draw your attention to your breath and follow it through your body to the belly. Oh my God. And then let it out and follow it. Just follow your breath. And one more, take another nice, long, slow, gentle breath. And then let it out. And as you complete the exhale, go ahead and open your eyes. And I want you to think back to about age 9. Do you remember where you were living when you were 9 years old? Do you remember what grade that you were in? Do you remember what school that you went to? Now I want you to close your eyes again. And I want you to think back to your earliest memory of food or eating. And it can be anything. So I want you to continue to think while I'm talking to you. So the way it usually works is that we come up with a food memory and then we work backwards. Maybe it's an event, maybe it's a holiday. So when you come to that food memory, stop for a second and think about how old were you? Where were you? And then see if you can go back any further. And then when you come to that next memory, think about who were you with? What was the food? And then see if you can go back even further than that. Whatever memory that you have in your mind and your thoughts right now, what do you recall? What were you doing? Who were you with? Where were you? On the next inhalation, go ahead and open your eyes. And Susan, I want to talk with you first. Did you come up with a memory?
I came up with a couple memories, and I'll tell you all of them that I remember. I can't remember an age that I was at. I have a couple of different ones, but that one I can't tell you an age. So 3 different ones I was thinking of.
Okay. Can you tell me about one of them?
One of them would be picnics at the beach with my family. We go to the beach all the time. We grew up on the ocean, And so it was whatever my mom would make for a picnic for everybody for the beach.
Mhm. And who would go?
All 6 kids and my mom and sometimes my dad.
Okay, so 6. So you have 5 brothers and sisters.
I do.
Right. What beach would you go to?
Winthrop Beach. And I can remember my mom bringing Kool-Aid or lemonade in a Tupperware container and wrapping it in tinfoil so it would stay cold because there was like no coolers, back then. And with 6 kids, I remember she would put, this goes back to my lunches that I remembered too, is that we didn't have a lot of money. So everything would be divided up small, like 1 can of tuna would be for 6 kids.
Okay. And so would you take tuna to the beach?
No, probably more like peanut butter and jelly or crackers, fruit, Kool-Aid. Nothing store-bought, though we would get a treat while we're there. Now that I'm remembering this, we did get to walk down to the little ice cream shop with some money and buy an ice cream or something while we were at the beach, or some candy.
And who would go to the ice cream store or to the candy store?
With my siblings. So we just walk down. My parents wouldn't go with us. They'd just give us the money and we'd walk down to the little store from the beach.
And when you think about that memory, what kind of feelings does it bring up?
Oh, good feelings, nostalgic feelings, summertime, fun, freedom, no worries. Yeah, just good times with my siblings. Absolutely. Sunshine. No worries.
All right. Good. Tracy, what about you? What did you come up with?
Well, when you instantly had us thinking about, like, you said like 9 years old, I for the life of me couldn't remember what grade I would have been in, but the first thing I thought of was my mom making me bring cans of Ensure in my lunch because she thought I was starving myself. Not in a bad way, but just was so concerned that I wasn't eating enough that she would stick cans of Ensure in my lunch. And I was like so mortified and embarrassed because it looked like something your grandma would drink. So they would not tease me. Well, let's be real. Like they'd tease me, but like I just chalked it up like, oh, they're my friends. They're not making fun of me. And so I would tell my mom, like, please don't put them in my lunch. But I knew she was doing it out of love and concern. That was her way. The second thing I thought of was dinners at my house. We all had a spot at the table. I have 2 older sisters. So we all sat at the same spot at the table, same with my parents. And we all sat down for dinners and you couldn't leave the table until you finished your meal. Like it just was, that was the rule. So we all had family time and we all talked and we all shared. And I was always the last one left at the table because I never wanted to finish my meal. I was a little stubborn little asshole. No, showing. I don't know. That's the second thing I thought of was dinners, and then it just being like, it could be peas sitting on my plate, and I was like, I don't like peas. I'm not eating them, and you're sitting there until you're eating your peas. I'd eat my peas eventually, but and then I think the third thing I thought of was, I don't know if I was older than the experience with the lunches or not, but I was old enough to ride my bike. And I would ride my bike because we lived very far from like town. So it wasn't like I could walk close to a store or something, but it was about an hour's bike ride. And I would ride my bike to the local like ice cream shop. And it was like one of those like they would roller skate up to your car type of ice cream places. And I would meet my friends that lived closer in town to this place, and we would meet up for ice cream. So that was something that I thought of in that exercise.
So when you were sitting at the table until you could eat all of your food, do you remember how long would you sit there sometimes?
I can distinctly remember I had this thing where I would rub my earlobes so that I would fall asleep. So I can remember times where I would literally try to make myself fall asleep so that I would get myself up from out of eating my meal. So I would sit there and I'd be like, and my parents wouldn't care. They'd let me fall asleep if I had to at the table. And then I would wake myself up and they'd be like, you eat your piece. Like they were that that hardcore. But so I could be, I don't know, an hour. I would be there sometimes if dinner was at like 5 o'clock. I'd be sitting there still at like 7 trying to finish my meal.
By yourself?
By myself. Well, I mean, they'd be in the kitchen. My mom would be in the kitchen, but everyone else, if they were done their meal, they were left the table and they were allowed to do like whatever. I was the youngest, or I'm the youngest.
So even though people were around or in the vicinity, kind of like at lunch when you had your Ensure, it was probably pretty lonely. You had to tackle that by yourself.
Yeah.
And even when you comforted yourself with the earlobes and you went to sleep and you woke up, that it was still there. You had to tackle that by yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there wasn't really I knew the lesson I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now. The lesson, you're not wasting your food, finish what you've got on your plate. But yeah, I mean, the sympathy I might have gotten away with it. I don't know. I'm sure a couple times where my mom was like, don't worry about it, or something. But yeah, I just sat there by myself.
Okay.
And then I would just come to the point where it was like, I just might as well eat these damn things and just so I could get up off the table.
Okay. All right. Good. Jack, what did you come up with?
So I had to write it down because you know me, I get distracted. So honestly, one of the first memories was you said school and it triggered school lunch. And it was, we used to have to get, starting in I think second grade, we had to get the reduced lunch tickets and you had to go to a special line to buy them. And I was so embarrassed to go buy them. So I would rather not eat just to save myself that embarrassment. And I mean, I think eventually I did, but I'd make my sister go get my tickets. I would make other people that were going to get it. Like I couldn't fathom people thinking that we were getting reduced lunch. Like we were those people. So that was the first thing that I thought of was just I would literally stress out so bad about what other people thought about our family and how poor we were that I would just rather not eat.
Okay. Stay with that for 1 second. So you would skip so that people wouldn't know, and, kind of to save that embarrassment. What do you do now? Not about eating, but in order to save people from embarrassment.
Oh man, Linda, you're getting deep. Well, now I do. I think what my sister did for me, step up, protect them, try to be that person that, is like, well, don't worry, I'll do it. I don't want you to get in trouble. I don't want you to have to worry about it. I'll do it. So I think I overdo it to keep them from having to feel any type of embarrassment or shame or hurt or anything.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. Did you come up with another memory or was that the primary?
Yeah. So another food memory was our pantry that would be filled once a week on payday. And I don't have any food memories before my parents got divorced when I was 3. But I don't have any food memories of struggles or anything until early grade school and everything. And as soon as I had little sisters, I'd say because then I think my concern was, is there enough food for them? Is there going to be enough food for everyone to eat? And so the one day a week when the pantry would be full, everyone would go in and hide food for the week, because you would either gorge yourself like my little sister would, and hide it under her bed and eat throughout the night and stuff like that. And I think my older sister, I think she would just hide all the bad snacks. But I never remember hiding anything. I never remember going in, and I just knew it was pantry day. It was the day that we got groceries, and I remember everyone hiding all their secret spots and all their snacks. I never stole anything from their sections. I just don't remember hiding anything. I just remember thinking, oh, well, if I miss out, I'll figure out a way to get food this week. I'll go to a friend's house after school and I'll snack with them because I know their parents get groceries on Wednesdays. So I always I just remember the food going so fast. It was always gone. Okay. Always gone. So that's another one.
So in listening to your story, Jack, some things that stood out to me was that feeling of embarrassment, that drive for protection, now protect other people from embarrassment or suffering or pain, whatever the case is. And also very resourceful, trying to figure out what to do, to make sure everybody had some. Okay. And then Tracy, some things that stood out to me with yours, which I kind of mentioned, was kind of that it may not have felt like loneliness at the time, but you were alone in your endeavor, that this was a job. These were jobs or tasks that you had to finish on your own. And if you didn't finish and you found another way to comfort yourself, you still had to go back and finish it on your own, and occasionally mom jumped in, saved the day, but you were there and you couldn't move on until you were done. Right? So I suspect you still have that same drive to get things done. Susan, I'll just leave you with that. Susan,
Yeah.
Hear a lot of nostalgia, like you mentioned, and connection, and that feeling of being togetherness, that you didn't go off to the store by yourself. Everybody went together. Everybody went to the beach together. Maybe dad wasn't there, but for the most part, it was you and your family, your tribe, and everybody did it together. And you went off to the ice cream place together, and whatever the case is, a very shared experience.
Can I just say too, that when both of Tracy and Jack brought up their memories, I had the same ones. I could not leave my table until I finished my food, and it would sometimes be an hour later. I remember having fish in my mouth and a whole glass of milk just to swallow one thing. And I remember having reduced lunch, the yellow ticket, and not wanting anyone to see it and having to punch it. So I can relate to both of you, which is very interesting. When you brought them up, I didn't remember them as my first memory, but when you guys brought them up, it thought, oh my gosh, of course, those were not fun memories. So I try to look for the fond memories in my food, I think, and not the unfond ones.
Mm-hmm. So we have, eating is a universal behavior. Everybody does it, right? And there's no escaping it, because even if you restrict your food, you got to eat sooner or later. Right? But we have made more connections around eating than anything else in our lives. So the more people talk, the more it sparks those memories, like, oh yeah, I used to do that at the table too, or I this or that. And so over years and years and decades and quarter centuries and half centuries for some of us, right, we have stored these emotions with food, and that's the connection. So on Sunday's post with the can of green bean, our go-to food, I mentioned about connections in there. And so in this seminar, we're not changing connections in people, because that would take years of therapy. Okay, so you go back to that earliest food memory and you find your age. So my earliest food memory is like about 7 years old. So that'd be 42 years for me. You take 1 month of therapy for every year, and that's about how long it takes to go back and change a connection, something that deep, right? So we don't waste a lot of time looking for, why do I do what I do? Because As soon as I can pinpoint one thing, like let's say Tracy being alone and having to finish the task by herself, now she may have remembered another connection. The connections, there's too many, they're too long, they're too deep, and it doesn't change what you have today. But understanding how those connections work is how you change the course. Right? So you're not going to change the connection that you have to food, but the way that we eat and how we eat is attached to our emotions, right? Except for when you're feeding hunger. And then even when you feed hunger, a lot of times it's attached to an emotion. So we're never going to change. We're never going to eliminate the fact that we eat because of our emotions. But what we can change is the course of what we do. We can change when we do it, how we do it, what we do it with. There's so many factors of what we can change, right? And so just keeping that in mind as we go through this week. So for those of you who are watching the video, I want you to practice, or I want you to try that little activity, see what you come up with, see what kind of feelings are there. And then from that, this next part is, okay, now what do I do? Recognize how those feelings might play a role in your eating habits now. So I too was that little kid who had to sit at the table for god-awful hours eating until everything on my plate was done, because, you know, my parents grew up from parents in the Depression, you know, and you didn't get to get up in the table if there was one speck on your plate, right? So I would figure out how to hide those peas in the garbage. And I got really creative. I got really, deceitful. And I was very, very good at it. I rarely ever got caught. And that process started how a lot of my thinking works now. I could have been a criminal. My father was a mastermind criminal. No shit, promise you. It's on the law books. And so I was raised by him, but that style of thinking played a big role in how I grew up. Fortunately, my mother was a saint and a Christian and just put the fear of God in me, right? Because I could have been a criminal. But that's how it starts. That feeling of protection, you know, Jack, that you have, that's why you're like the mama bear. You know, it's like you can't stand to see anybody going through pain and suffering, and you got to jump in and fix it and help out and do what you can. And all of that, a lot of what we go through comes back to those connections that we made with eating. So even now, how you express those behaviors may not have anything to do with eating. It started with eating. And when we get under stress, depending on the type of stress, it goes back to eating. So imagine, Jack, if you were in a situation and your family was going through turmoil that you had no control over whatsoever, you know, and you couldn't protect them from whatever was happening. My suspicion is that's something that would drive you to turn to food. You know, you pick up a snack, or you order pizza, or you do whatever you can, because if you can't fix their problem, you can certainly let them know they're loved. Let's share a pizza together. Those kinds of things, right? And Susan, for you, my suspicion is that when you have family get-togethers, they're probably hog-tied down with food. There's probably so much food for everybody that everybody gets to take a big basket home, right? But everybody does something together, you know? And, you know, so how we manage stress now has some connection to food, whether you realize it or not. Even if you restrict your food, it still goes back many, many, many moons. All right, make sense? All right. Any questions or comments about anything that we just talked about?
I'm just kind of blown away by the whole thing. I never thought that my food had or my lack of, and I never would throw up food, or I never didn't eat, you know, because it was just, I just didn't know. My mind is blown right now, because I always would wait until everyone else got fed, and then, okay, there's leftover, I would eat. My stress comes, I don't eat but I feed my kids. Like you said, I order pizza. I'm like, oh, we had a hard week. Let's get some pizza. It's okay. Let's go for ice cream. I don't even like ice cream. But like to fill them up to make sure that they're well fed. And I make my kids sit at the table till they're done eating because I'm like, in my mind, we can afford food now. But in my mind, we never could. So I'm like, that is a full meal. You will eat that meal because that is paid for. And I would rather overbuy groceries and throw them away than not have groceries, or I panic. Which is, I would spend $300 today when you're going over this stuff. I'm like, memories from second grade, memories from that. $300 today on groceries. And I'm like, what the heck did I do? And I do that every time. And then it's way more than we need. And I end up throwing stuff away. But now I've gotten good at like buying more freezer stuff. So at least I can't throw it away. But I'm telling you, the apocalypse could come through right now. We'd be good for about 4 months. And I'm like, why do I do this? Every time. Well, it's because we didn't have that. There was always that like lack. So I always fill that void to make sure that everybody has food. It's really, I just didn't realize it.
So people ask the question all the time, why do I do what I do? So, and I told everybody in the group, we're not really focused on why you do it. We're not going to change why you do it, but it is interesting sometimes to recognize these connections, and you don't even have to recognize the connection in order to change the course of it. But it is kind of a nice little exercise. And you can go back for as many memories as you can recall about eating when you were young. You can probably bring it forward to how you are today. And so I was that kid too, who, my parents split up when I was 9 years old, and my mother was raising 3 kids. She had no money, no education. She was working at gas stations. And so we literally had no food in the house most of the time. And anytime that we did have food, it was something that you had to cook. So at 9 years old, I was cooking. And that's why when my children were very young, even at freaking 5 years old, I taught them how to make their cereal. And then at 8 years old, they were cooking and using the stove. And it was because I just had that survival instinct in me, And so now, moving forward to when I grew up and got married and had extra money, my pantry has not been empty since. But that contributed to overeating and gaining weight because I had access to everything. And still to this day, I throw out a lot of food that I don't eat, but my pantry is always full. So I'm not going to change that connection, but I can change the course of what I do with it. Right? So Tracy, any comments or questions, anything?
I'm with Jack. I think I didn't even associate my story to feeling alone until you said it. I think that's what blew me away, because I'm still thinking about it. Like, you totally just put a little mind F-bomb there. I was like, whoa, what the heck? And it makes me think about other things. So, like, kind of just like blew me away there for a second.
So, I'm sorry.
And the same thing, like you said. What? Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that when we were on our retreat a few weeks ago in St. Augustine, immediately the first day, that one of the things that I noticed about you was that you were in the kitchen cleaning up. The whole weekend you helped the cooking. You were either doing it all on your own or you were doing it. Most of the time you were doing it on your own. And, at one point, Jack said something about, okay, you guys need to get your ass in there and help her. I was like, no, because you don't need anybody to do anything. People probably get in your way. You're going to get the job done with or without somebody.
I think I think it's because of, like you said, I don't know, maybe from like at a young age, I was just so used to doing it on my own that it was like you either do it or you're just not going to get done. And I don't know. Wow, I'm just blown away, because I feel like now that makes sense with a lot of things, how I dealt with things in my life. Like, you're alone in this. So if you want anything, you got to do it for yourself. no one's going to do it for you. And you can, this isn't supposed to be a little cry session here, so I'm just not going to go.
I told you before Jack got on that you guys might cry, right?
Damn it.
But the other thing,
Damn it.
the other thing I noticed about your beautiful, vivacious, vibrant personality is that that's at least the second story that you've told. You told one on Facebook about, wearing the head brace as a kid and how that was people would pick on you, embarrassing, but you just kind of go with the flow and you laugh it off and you don't let it affect you in an outward way so that you're still with everybody. And that's, you're very, have a great sense of humor. You're very lighthearted. Let's go with the flow. It's like, we know that we can, make a smart ass comment to you or pick on you because you're going to take it in stride and not hate us, right? It's not a bullying type situation. And you develop that because of, those experiences of the insurer being picked on,
You shared a story in your Saturday post, your video, about how when you were young, you could eat whatever you wanted because you never gained any weight and it didn't matter. And it was like you tried and tried and tried and you ate all the things in the world and you still wouldn't gain weight. That was me. I had this awkward growth spurt when I was really young. I had not developed. I just wasn't a girl with curves and I looked like a boy. And I would get teased for it. In a way where, again, it wasn't like teasing now. And I can only imagine if I were me now, what it would be like, because it would probably be 10 times worse. But people saying oh, you're it's like I'm looking at your back. And they'd be like looking at my friend because I just I had no boobs and I looked like a boy. And then add the braces and the headgear. Well, Jesus, recipe for walking kind of joke. And then my mom putting in shirt. It was like, what are you guys doing to me? You're really trying to kill my mojo. Okay. So I was this kid who had braces, no boobs, just no lanky, and I hear my shirt, just going to school, and it was. I had to roll with it. But it killed my self-esteem more than I like to admit. And I don't know. I think I just didn't want to be that kid that people picked on and they knew they could pick on. So I would rather them me join in on the joke than be the one just being made of being the joke and just be on the outside, you know what I mean? So yeah. I
didn't share my earliest food memory, but my earliest food memory was I was very young and we would always go to my grandmother's house and have fish fries, catfish. I love catfish, right? And I love the chips. And so we would have catfish that we caught ourselves, and literally this big, right? And so half of that was the tail. And so everybody would give me their tails, but I was the baby and nobody ever talked to me. I was the only girl out, kid. All the kids, cousins, everybody, they were all boys. And I was young and little. Nobody ever talked to me. I was the loner. Even at the dinner table, nobody, it's not like now where we interact with everybody's kids and, hey, what are you playing with? This and that. Nobody ever said anything to me. I was invisible, right? At least I felt invisible. But the only time that I was ever spoken to was everybody was so impressed that I liked the tails on the catfish that everybody would give me the tails on their catfish. And that's how I got my attention. And so that kind of started that process of how I got attention. So then I didn't have, because I was that, I was the president of the itty bitty titty committee and didn't have a body because I was so freaking skinny. And everybody picked on me because of my skinniness that I was like, I can fucking eat you guys out of house and home and then we'll see me, right? So that's how I got positive attention was I could eat everybody out. I could out eat everybody. So, all right, Susan, what about you?
What about me? I feel like we just need to do this every Sunday night because this is good therapy for all of us. This is still being recorded, by the way.
Right.
Our stuff. I think it's very interesting. I'm thinking about, oh my God, how have I fucked up my children now because of the things that I have carried with me, you know, especially the rewards, especially like with my daughter, like food for celebration and food for pain and food for, you know, giving, not even realizing that you're doing that for your kids because you do it for yourself. So that's really a big aha. And even to just stop doing that now, to be aware of it, because I feel like I'm creating generations of people that are going to carry on whatever my food issues were. You know, they're going to develop their own, but I'm still like, it's like passing it down to somebody else. And that's, you know, not what you want to do, for sure.
For sure. The challenge with that is that you never really know what the connection is that someone is going to build, you know,
Right.
so that, but it is something to consider, right? But think about it in terms of the behavior that it's setting them up for, because you'll never know that connection until they're, you know, 30, 40, 50 years old. And then they tell you, hey, you know, this is the connection I made. But, you know, making kids sit at the table until they finish their food, you do want to, you know, it's good to teach the lesson that they need to, you know, be grateful for what they have. My mother drilled in me that, you know, eat all you got and be glad you got it, right? And, you know, all of that. So money was tight. We had to eat all our food. We couldn't afford to waste it. That's a good message to teach our kids. But how long do you want them to sit there?
No,
And
I never made my kids do that, but maybe because I had to do it.
right. And that may be, but you know, when do you, there's a balance, you know, when do you let them up? Do you just let them not eat whatever in the heck they want, you know, because, and it's such a fine line, but just know you never really know. You need to think about the actions and the actual message that you're trying to send. You know, I want to teach my kids that you don't waste food, but you don't also have to eat when you're full, you know, and all of that. So bringing that back around to emotional eating. So emotions don't have to be bad. You know, emotional eating is just any emotion. Hunger is emotion, right? And you're not going to change the connection very easily, but you can change the course of it. And that's what we're going to kind of dive into for Tuesday's lesson, now that hopefully everybody goes out and does this little exercise, right? There you go. Any last comments and anything?
So funny, just to Susan, you said you never made your kids do it because you had to do it. I never had to do it because that's when I would eat, is at my meals. And I'm sitting here, like you said, there's a million connections. My mind is blown. I'm like, how is this connection fit to this? I would inhale my meals, and I still do. I'm the first done because that's it. That's all I get. And if there's extra, I want that extra because I'm so hungry that I have to finish what I have first so I can get seconds. But I only eat on my meals because I'm not going to go steal stuff from the pantry, just take from my siblings and everything else. That's probably why I don't snack. And probably why I don't even know when I'm full. But it's funny, I sit and I make my kids finish their plate because I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I would eat everything and I would be the first done, and you're sitting there acting like you ungrateful little jerks. Like, horrible. I don't say that to them, but that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, oh my God. And then I set the timer every single night. Like, it's just funny. We try to do the opposite, but the same, you know what I mean? I feel like no matter what we do, our kids are we don't know what connection it's gonna make. And that made me feel a little better. So thank you, Linda, for saying that, because then I was thinking, oh no. So thank you for saying that, because I mean, at the end of the day, my kid could turn out to be a mastermind criminal anyways. You know? So no, thank you.
Hide anything, right? All right, very good. So you guys want to stay on, but we're going to turn off the recording. And,
yeah.
There, awesome.